All right, Ben, you good to go, bud?
I'm good.
All right, here we go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to WKYC.com, also WKYC app, Facebook Live, and also YouTube. It has been a busy, hectic, crazy Wednesday, and that's just going to continue tonight as the Cleveland Browns, the National Football League in total, is going to release the 2021 schedule. I'm Dino DeNatale. Ben Axelrod is with me. The voice of the Browns, Jim Donovan, will join us a few minutes after Front Row. And Ben, I know the show is starting at 8 o'clock, but the NFL kind of gave us a little bit of a morsel of information about week one. What do we know at this point here before the actual official schedule release?
Yeah, we essentially know the entire week one NFL schedule. They did it differently this year, as you mentioned. They had the networks carrying the games pretty much release on their morning shows this morning, their entire week one slates. That includes CBS, that includes Fox. I believe NBC released its Thursday night and Sunday night games, and Monday Night Football on ESPN as well. So we know the entire week one slate. Usually, you get things trickle out and leak here and there. We've certainly had some leaks to the schedule and to the Browns schedule throughout the day. But as far as what we know hard and fast and what's been confirmed, we know the week one schedule for the entire NFL at this point.
You surprised? The Browns obviously it'll be a rematch with Kansas City in week one. I mean, it's gonna be great. Can't wait. You surprised that wasn't? And I know they're putting it. I know CBS has it as their late national game. Surprised that's not a primetime game, a playoff rematch. Not whether it was going to be week one or whatever week. I'm surprised because it's a marquee matchup in the AFC.
Yeah, I think I can tell you this much: is had the Chiefs won the Super Bowl over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I feel pretty confident in saying that this would be the Thursday night season opener out in Kansas City, because that's typically, the Super Bowl champion typically hosts that Thursday night opener. They're usually playing, a team that they have some history with, a team with some intrigue, and the Browns certainly check all of those boxes right now. So I think this, like I said, had the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, this would have been penciled in to that Thursday night slate. And yeah, I mean, this would have made sense on a Monday night. This would have made sense on a Sunday night, a Thursday night, what have you. But it is, that Sunday late game, primetime game. I think this is going to be, Tony Romo and Jim Nantz. I think this is going to be the A crew for CBS. So, this is going to be, aside from those primetime games, this is going to be kind of that prime time or that premier game on that week one schedule for the NFL on that Sunday slate. So, I mean, it's surprising to a degree, but I also think, CBS gets to pick some games here and there. And I think especially for week one, you kind of want to start off with a bang, and they're certainly doing that with Browns and Chiefs.
As I think back to 2019, the Browns had been coming off of a 7-8-1 season. They had a Sunday nighter right away, 2 Monday nighters right away. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think they ended up with 4 primetime games that year, because I think there was a Thursday nighter as well. We might do better than that maybe this year, depending on, obviously matchups and network preferences, but potentially 4 to 5 again.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that, the Browns are one of the NFL's marquee teams at this point, and not just, because of the history of the Cleveland Browns and all that, because that didn't buy them much from 1999 to circa 2018. But, you just look at this roster. I mean, you go to NFL.com, you go to ESPN, you go to any sort of website that does NFL power rankings. The Browns right now range from 4 to 7, and there aren't a lot that have them much lower than 7. Maybe a couple have them 8. I can't imagine any have them out of the top 10. I mean, this is a team with no shortage of star power between Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Kareem Hunt, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Jadeveon Clowney. This is really the reigning NFL Coach of the Year, and Kevin Stefanski. This has become one of the NFL's marquee teams. So, look, we already know they're going to play a late Sunday afternoon game, despite being on the East Coast in Kansas City in week one. every team pretty much gets a Thursday night game, so you can pencil the Browns in for a Thursday night game. I think that, they're going to get a Sunday night game. I think they're going to get a Monday night game. And I think, we already know that there's been a leak that they're going to be playing on Christmas Day as well, on Saturday against the Green Bay Packers. So, yeah, I mean, I think there are limits to how many primetime games a team can actually play. And I'm not sure if that 4:25 game against the Chiefs count towards that. But I think the Browns, just like in 2019, when they were coming off that, Baker Mayfield's rookie season, and just added Odell Beckham Jr. and had all that hype, I think the Browns are going to pretty much fill their allotment here heading into the 2021 schedule.
Now, we're starting this thing right around the 7:30 time, and we will hear Jim Donovan's finishing up front row, and we'll get him on here in a little bit. Again, the league is releasing it on their 8 o'clock primetime show, but we anticipate at some point, next few minutes, could be next 15 or 20 minutes, we might get the actual schedule from the Browns prior to that national show.
Yeah, I think we probably will. I can't imagine we'll be waiting till 8 to get the schedule. I know the Browns are starting their own live stream now with Nathan Zagura and Joe Thomas. And I'm just looking at Twitter here, seeing some news trickle out across the league just in terms of other games that we didn't previously know. So, I don't know if we'll be getting a social graphic from the Browns here or a tweet or anything in the next couple of minutes. It's certainly possible. But, yeah, I don't think we'll be waiting till 8 to get this full schedule here.
You mentioned earlier the Browns could have been on that opening night of the season, Thursday, if Kansas City had won the Super Bowl, but it's going to be Tampa Bay. And I love the fact that Tampa Bay will play the Dallas Cowboys, that Jerry Jones has to watch another team hang a banner or have a little bit of a party. That's going to be, you talk about good theater leading into the opening of the NFL weekend. That's a pretty good start. I mean, these guys know what they're doing in the NFL. There's no doubt.
Yeah, they don't. They're not too coy about scheduling for TV and scheduling for ratings. And cheap plug, I believe that game will be airing on WKYC Channel 3 on September. What would that be? September 9th. So that will be a primetime game on NBC. And yeah, I mean, you just look at all the star power of I remember going back to when the Browns, when they made the playoffs, and we were trying to guess, when that game would be. Would that be the early Saturday game? Would that be the early Sunday game? It wound up being the primetime Sunday night game. But I just remember, because the Bucs were playing at that point, they were playing in the wild card round, just saying you can go ahead and pencil Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in for that Saturday night primetime game. And lo and behold, I think they pretty much played on Saturday night until they made it to the actual Super Bowl. And I don't think, that's going to change, this year. I would imagine Tampa Bay is going to have a handful of primetime games, and then you throw in the Dallas Cowboys with Dak Prescott coming back and their obvious star power. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll be seeing a lot of Dallas Cowboys and a lot of Tampa Bay Buccaneers in primetime throughout this season.
It's in, we obviously know it's interesting when you do the schedule release. You know who you're going to play. I mean, that's basically decided when the season's over, the regular season's over, and the schedule, the standings are all in place. You know who you're going to play. But the NFL's been good. I've agreed with what they've done. They tend to backfill the end of the season schedules with division games, with the idea that, in order to get to the playoffs, you got to beat Pittsburgh. In order to get to the playoffs, you got to beat the Ravens. I think I'd be shocked as if week 18, because we're going to have to get used to the 17 games in an 18-week season now. I think I'd be stunned as if that week 18 game wasn't versus Baltimore or versus Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think, they've tried to, usually they try to get you one of those divisional games early, and they certainly do try to backload it. And we saw that last season with the Pittsburgh Steelers being in week 17, which wound up being the game that the Cleveland Browns clinched their playoff spot in. And I mean, they had a late Monday night game last December against the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm right there with you. I wouldn't be surprised, to see the Steelers or the Ravens and even the Bengals. I'd throw the Bengals in the mix. I wouldn't be surprised to see a late game against the Bengals, just because, that Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow matchup, I think, is going to continue to get a lot of attention with Joe Burrow being back in the Bengals lineup. And then, yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, it's going to be really strange getting used to this 17-game schedule, 18 weeks. That's brand new. This year, the Browns are going to have 9 home games instead of their traditional 8. So that's a benefit for the Browns this season. And then I'll tell you, Dino, another benefit for the Browns this season, just in terms of already knowing who they're going to play in terms of the teams they're going to play. The Browns are actually playing a third-place schedule. Despite making it to the playoffs, despite winning a game against the Steelers, the Browns finished third in the AFC North behind the Steelers and behind the Ravens. So some of those cross-divisional matchups in the rest of the AFC, they kind of work out favorably for the Browns, although one of those is going to be against the New England Patriots going out to New England because the Patriots finished in third place as well.
That'll be a treat. Those games in New England, when the Browns play the Patriots, weird things happen. I mean, whether it's Colt McCoy having like the game of his life, or it's a bunch of stupid things that happen in the final 2 minutes of a game to cost you a win. That'll be fun. I mean, those are among the games you just kind of pencil like, wow, that'll be intriguing. And I know Jim Donovan loves to go back to his area, at Foxborough in New England. So that'll be fun for him as well. Since we know now, I mean, we're going to be Jimmy and Deke and Nathan will be traveling, I think, this year instead of being at First Energy Stadium for all the games.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they didn't play the Patriots all that often throughout the 2000s, because obviously you'd have those cross AFC North, AFC East matchups that happen, once every 3 years, once every 4 years. Now, this is a matchup that isn't because the Browns are scheduled against the AFC East. This is a matchup because the Browns finished in third place and the Patriots finished in third place. And it's just kind of interesting to see the way the schedule comes together in that regard. And another interesting, I think, factoid about this schedule is this is going to be the first time since 2014 that the Browns are not playing the New York Jets in the regular season. And the Jets obviously play in the AFC East, and whether it was the AFC North playing the AFC East or the Browns and Jets typically finishing both in last place in their divisions, they've been matching up every year, 2015 through 2020. And you go back through it, there's some pretty crazy moments from obviously Baker Mayfield's debut in the beer fridges all across Cleveland to end the losing streak. Myles Garrett's first game came against the New York Jets. Josh McCown helicoptering into the end zone.
Oh, yeah.
In 2015. Last year, the Browns going there and playing a Jets team they, I believe, had one win all season to that point. Then the Browns get hit with contact tracing due to COVID. For all intents and purposes, don't have a functioning wide receiver on the roster. Wind up signing a bunch of practice squad guys, lose the game, kind of puts the Browns playoff hopes in peril at that point before they beat the Giants next week. And that game actually is what knocked the Jets out of first place to get Trevor Lawrence in the NFL draft. So just a lot of recent shared history between the Browns and Jets. And at least as far as the regular season is concerned, it's coming to an end here in 2021.
So you're saying if the Browns had beaten the Jets, Urban Meyer might not have gone to the Jacksonville Jaguars?
I'd say that's a pretty safe assumption. It could have big ramifications for Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow, it looks like.
Yeah, exactly right. As we're looking forward to the release of the schedule. It will officially happen on the NFL Network at 8:00, but we do anticipate that there will be, prior to that, news from the Browns on their social media by a release, and we will have the schedule for you. I want to go back to something you said, just breaking away from the schedule for a second here. Because I saw you talking to people about it on Twitter, and we'll have Jim Donovan in a second. When you looked at the Browns roster versus other teams' rosters prior to the draft, if I read that right, except for maybe the Chiefs and the Bills, you have them kind of with the third best roster in the AFC?
Yeah,
maybe Ravens.
I think it's, I think they're right there with those teams. Obviously, I think the Chiefs and the Bills have more established quarterbacks, but I mean, man, you look at the job that Andrew Berry did this offseason, just filling every hole that this, especially the defense had. Jadeveon Clowney, John Johnson III, Troy Hill, Anthony Walker, Jeremiah Owusu, Koromora, or as we call him on the show, JOK. And then on offense, really just going out and getting that speed receiver and Anthony Schwartz. Like, this is a top to bottom roster that, at least as far as their top 22 guys, their starting depth chart, there's not really a hole you could pick in this starting lineup right now. And obviously, as we saw last year and in a COVID world still, there's going to be some depth concerns, and you certainly look at some positions. I think the offensive line and linebacker to a degree and defensive line, those kind of stand out where you'd like to see the Browns add some depth. But just in terms of like a all 22 starting depth chart, yeah, I mean, I'd have the Browns right there with the Chiefs and the Bills and the AFC. And really, I think, in the top 5 or 6 in the NFL.
Let's bring in now the voice of the Browns, just finishing up front row. He is Jim Donovan joining us. And Jimmy, first and foremost, for you and Deke and Nathan, we traveling this year, and that to me is as good news as anything. And we know at least week 1 where your flight's going to be booked to another trip to Arrowhead and a chance to see Mr. Mahomes and the Chiefs.
Well, it's good to be with you guys. It's an exciting night. Boy, the NFL knows how to do it. They just constantly keep coming at you with big events. I mean, we're just on the heels of the draft, and now we have the schedule release. And then we'll be watching the rookie minicamp by the end of the week. It's just fabulous how they stay in the news cycle. Yeah, Dino, it will be great. It was, I give everybody a lot of credit for getting us through last season and how we did it technically and how we did the games. But I have to tell you, it would have been great to be at those games and to have full stadiums. So that's the big A-B into the to add up in the equation. Let's get into the stadiums. Let's travel. Let's get the fans back in 100% capacity, and then it will feel really great. And it sets up as just a thrilling season. I mean, and it has so much more legitimacy this time around than maybe back in, coming off 2007 when they went into 2008. They were 10-6, 2007, and everybody was excited about them going into 2008. They got about 5 primetime games, and they didn't deliver. They really didn't deliver. And of course, a couple of years ago when they were supposed to be the darlings of the AFC, when the OBJ move was made. But this is so much more legitimate because of the strength of the team on both sides of the ball now and what they've done defensively. It's going to be great. It's going to be great to be in big games, and they'll be in them.
Jimmy, one of those big games we already know was the NFL did their schedule release a little different, at least as far as week 1, releasing it through the networks earlier this morning. And lo and behold, the Browns are going back to where their season ended last year in Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium. What was your reaction when you saw that schedule announcement? And man, I'll tell you, if you would have picked a year for the Browns to finally end that drought of week 1s without wins, you would have thought it'd be this year, but they're going to have their work cut out for them in Kansas City.
Oh, absolutely. No matter when you play them, you're right. So they're 0-20-1 on opening day since they've come back into the NFL in 1999. There'll be a lot of pressure on Joe Woods going into that game, the Browns defensive coordinator. After all, they gave him a ton in free agency and in the draft and completely rebuilt that defense. To showcase it in that game, on the first game of the season against that offense and that quarterback and that tight end, and you can go and that Tyreek Hill and all of that, it's going to be a real test. Ben, I'll go back to, and Dino, you probably remember this too. When the Browns lost in the playoffs to the Miami Dolphins when Bernie Kosar's rookie year, and they came into the next season, and the Chicago Bears had that great defense and had won the Super Bowl the year before against the Patriots, and were picked to be a dynasty at that time with Mike Ditka and Buddy Ryan. The Browns opened up at Soldier Field in Chicago that year, and of course there was the hoopla of raising the championship pennant for the Bears being the world champions once again, and they went in there and they lost the game. But, and this is important, they lost the game, but they were very, very competitive. They played the Bears right down to the final few minutes in the game. Dangerously close for the Bears in that game. They let the Browns get back in and almost caught them. And even though they lost the game, it kind of set the stage for that season. And they went on, of course, and they ended up like 12-4 that year and were the top seed in the AFC. So I'm saying that, I think the Browns can go in there and be very competitive. I'm going to be fascinated at how they do defensively in that game. That's going to be where my attention is going to be focused. Can they stop that offense? Can they slow it down with what they've spent and what they've drafted in the offseason? But number two, how they come out on the backside of that. Even if they lost the game, how do they come out of that? Because it can be a tremendous building block.
Well, and we remember last year they came out of the blocks, they went to Baltimore and got handled by the Ravens. It was not a good debut for Kevin Stefanski and company, but I think it worked out well for them that they played. Ben, you got something?
We have a schedule.
We have a schedule. Excellent.
If you look at the Cleveland Browns Twitter account, they just released it.
Excellent. Jim Donovan, would you like to know where you're going to be going here next
Well, I
year?
have some ideas. I think, I was able to ascertain some things because I was kind of zoned in on the primetime games. So by my estimation, they're going to play a Thursday night game here in October against Denver.
That's correct.
They're going to play Christmas Day in Green Bay against the Packers. They're going to play a Sunday night game, I believe, in Baltimore, kind of late in the year, in December maybe.
Yep.
And then I think they're going to play the last Monday night game of the year in Pittsburgh against the Steelers at Heinz Field. That's what I had kind of picked up some breadcrumbs on that. Am I right?
Yes,
you are
those
right.
Are all accurate.
Right on target, my friend. All right, so here we go, and I know, Ben, you got to update.
So that's the easy part. Now we have to go out and win those games.
Yeah, exactly. Ben will have the story at WKYC.com, but let's get it to you now here. As we know, week 1, Kansas City, the Browns will be at Arrowhead for a 4:25 game on Sunday, September 12th. The home opener, and Jimmy, it's going to be an amazing atmosphere at First Energy Stadium. You've talked about this a lot, especially in the offseason. The Houston Texans will come to First Energy Stadium. That will be a 1 o'clock kickoff on Sunday, September the 19th.
So, Dino, right away, that will be a fascinating game. Who the heck is going to be at quarterback for the Texans? We know who it used to be, who will be a quarterback for us, but we know that. But who will be a quarterback for the Houston Texans in that game with that combustible situation that's going on down there with Deshaun Watson? And, they drafted a quarterback. Didn't they draft the kid from Stanford? Did they draft him, Davis Mills?
Davis Mills.
What in a number of these games, who is going to be the quarterback? Who will be the quarterback of the Patriots when the Browns go to New England? Will it be Cam Newton, or will they be in Mac Jones' world at that time? Who's going to be the quarterback in Green Bay when the Browns play there on Christmas Day? But anyway, those are some of the storylines for the opposing teams.
Yeah, how about here's another quarterback one for week 3, Jimmy. Again at First Energy Stadium, 1 o'clock on Sunday, September 26th. The Chicago Bears will be in town. Could that be Justin Fields by then? Or are they still going to be going with Andy Dalton and kind of being that bridge to the next guy?
Yeah, that will be very, very interesting to watch. And, it really will. I mean, how Justin Fields is able to, how deep are they into Justin Fields? I mean, are they into him right away, or are they going to bring him along slowly? Is it going to be the Tyrod Taylor plan with Baker Mayfield, or are they just going to throw him in there? After all, they ended up picking him right away.
And then we got week 4, another road game. And again, it'll stay in the NFC North. Browns in Minnesota to take on the Vikings. So that'll also be a 1 o'clock kickoff. So no primetime games in the first month of the year, by the by, which is a lot different than 2 years ago when, I felt like I was saying to Ben as we started, Jimmy, the Browns were, against the Jets on prime time,
right,
against the Rams,
right,
against the 49ers, like 3 in the first 5 weeks.
Yeah, the thing will be, Dino, that opening game against Kansas City, it's not, like you say, a primetime game under the description in television of what primetime is, but that is that 4:25 game on CBS, so that is their main game. So I would assume you'll probably have Jim Nantz and Tony Romo for that game, their A-team, Tracy Wolfson, for that opening game, because they've put that in that really cherished spot that they have, that 4:25 kickoff in the afternoon. That's their marquee game.
And then so now we're into October 10th. It's a Sunday. This will be fun for you and the crew. Browns in LA to take on the Chargers for a 4:05 start. You talk about two great young quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You know, they love Herbert out there. They love what he's done with them, and you know, it'll be a West Coast roadie for the Browns.
Yeah, and it will be good to be in that stadium. And I'm sure they're saying it will be good to have people in that stadium because it is something to see, and they want people in it.
Yeah, well, the last time the Browns played the Chargers, you were in that soccer stadium, right? That 25,000 seat stadium or whatever.
Yeah, and we were forced to do the game, Dino, in Galaxy shirts, LA Galaxy shirts. I wore Landon Donovan's jersey. Imagine that.
Ben, are you still writing? Or are you back with us, bud?
No, I'm here.
Okay. I wanted to get so that's the first 5 games of the year. Chiefs, Texans, Bears, Vikings, Chargers. And then you get into the middle, and I'll go to Ben here on this one for this first one. Back home, first of 3 home games, Arizona Cardinals on October the 17th. That will also be a late start time, 4:05 on the kickoff for that one. So that'll be, I would assume, a national Fox game for perhaps Joe Buck and Troy Aikman to come and see, again, a couple of Oklahoma quarterbacks duel.
Yeah, you look at it and they come back, they play the Cardinals. Then the week after that, they host the Broncos on Thursday Night Football. And then the week after that, host the Steelers at First Energy Stadium. So that's 5 of the first 8 games are in Cleveland, including their Thursday night game is sandwiched between 2 other home games. So you'll have the short week at home, you'll have the long week at home. So, I mean, man, I know we feel like maybe that Chiefs game was not the best start for this Browns team to get off to, but 5 of the first 8 at home, including, you know, some favorable scheduling around that Thursday night game, which can really throw a wrench in a lot of teams' schedules. And against some, you know, really some beatable teams, you look at this and there's only a couple of playoff teams, the Chiefs, the Bears, and the Steelers in your first 8 games. So really, I think kind of a favorable scheduling start here for the Browns.
That's your first division game for the Browns. Will be on Halloween against the Steelers. I mean, yeah, that's the first division game for the Browns will be that game. Jimmy, important this year. I mean, I think the Browns did great with it last year. You win games at home and you win games in your division, and that's going to give you that leg up if you're trying to, you know, have home field, win the division, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, Dino, I don't think the Browns are going to dance around this anymore about what their expectations are going into this season and further seasons down the road. I think they want to win the division, and I think they feel they're capable of winning the division. In other words, I don't think they want to be coming down the stretch and saying, okay, you know, you're in that category of wild card or in the hunt when the television networks, when the pregame shows put those categories up and you're coming down to the last 3 games of the year. That's nerve-wracking. And you're relying on combinations of what you do and what other teams do in other games. You just want a direct line. The direct line is to win the division, you know, go out and win the division. And I think that the remake of this defense in the offseason, and what they've done, and the way it looks on paper, was not only done to overall change the defense, but I think it was also specifically done to win the division. In other words, how can we defend Lamar Jackson? You know, how are we going to do that? How are we going to defend Joe Burrow? How are we going to defend what Burrow has in that wide receiver group? What are we going to do against Pittsburgh? Because they are still Pittsburgh. So as much as it is an overall landscape of we have to play better defense, and they do. And they should. But I think it's also, we want to win the division. Okay, how do we do that? We're going to have to control that guy in Baltimore. We're going to have to, you know, defend that kid down in Cincinnati and all of those receivers he has. And we're going to have to get over that mental block that I think maybe we knocked down last year in the last 2 weeks of the last regular season game and then the playoff game against the Steelers.
Ben, before the bye, the Browns will have Bengals on November 7th. On the road at the Patriots on the 14th. Jimmy gets to go back to New England. The Lions on the 21st. Those are all 1:00 start games. And then, as Jimmy mentioned, that Sunday night game against the Ravens in Baltimore on the 26th, and then the bye. It's a later bye, but I think it's a good time right before that stretch run in December.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it both ways, especially in a 17-game schedule. That's a pretty late bye. I'm honestly surprised the NFL didn't move to 2 bye weeks with the 17 games. So, but yeah, I mean, this is again, I think that Patriots game, Foxborough is never an easy place to win, but the Bengals are coming off another tough year. Detroit is in full-on rebuilding mode, but that Week 12 game, November 28th at Baltimore on Sunday Night Football, that certainly looms large right before the bye there. So the Browns can kind of empty the chamber there and head into the bye and hopefully rest up for the stretch run.
And then look at this, Jimmy, right out of the bye on Sunday, December 12th, the Ravens. So you play the Ravens essentially back-to-back with the bye week sandwiched in. I mean, you don't see that very often.
No, not at all. Boy, it really is interesting. If you remember last year, it was the bye week and what they did during the bye week that really helped them a great deal. That's when they kind of took off, especially Baker took off offensively and at the quarterback position. And they got on that run. Now this is a much later bye week. That's very, very, that's critical. That's, like Ben says, it can go both ways. I mean, if you're really banged up, you really would welcome a bye week earlier than that. But, on the other side of it, boy, I have to tell you, that Sunday night game in Baltimore, that late in the year, that is going to be something. That has the shapings and the makings of a classic. Remember now, that Monday night game last year here in Cleveland between the Ravens and the Browns, probably, when you take a step back, that was probably the game of the year. Whether it was a regular season game, a Monday night game, a playoff game, or indeed the Super Bowl, that was the game of the year for excitement and viewing. That was a classic.
And to me, it's like you said, Jimmy, when you talk about the Browns defense, so much of this in the offseason was going out. We got to find a way to stop Lamar Jackson. Yeah. We can't let this guy beat us, whether with his legs or with his arm. And the fact that you're going to see him twice in that 3-week span, and that could be really essentially 2 division championship type games. That's going to be fun.
Boy, that's going to be, I really, when you size up the AFC North and you take a look at these teams and to have that schedule set up that way, and they'll know a lot about each other by the time they meet in those 2 games. I mean, you're right. That's like being in the playoffs before you get in the playoffs. And you're going to have to play it that way, too. I mean, you could be playing for so much at that time, Dino, something that you touched upon. I mean, you could be playing for a home field at that time. You could be playing for a first-round bye, those type of things. I mean, the weight of those games is going to be huge.
And then the final 4 games for the Browns in December and into January, apparently it's like a flex game against the Raiders. It'll either be Saturday, December 18th or Sunday, December 19th, home game against Las Vegas. So stand by as we go through the year to figure out when and what time that game will be. As Ben and Jimmy both said, the Browns will indeed play on Christmas Day on December 25th. That'll be a 4:30 start time at Lambeau against the Packers. Merry Christmas, Jimmy. And then 2 division games to wrap up the year. Steelers on Week 17 on January 3rd. And that, again, is going to be a Monday nighter. And then wrap up the regular season on Sunday, January 6th. Is that right? Again, it's 1 o'clock against the Bengals.
I never remember. This is where we need our friend Dino, Steve King. He would remember this.
Yes.
I never remember the Browns playing on Christmas Day. I do remember the Browns playing on Christmas Eve. Hugh Jackson got his first win on Christmas Eve against they were the San Diego Chargers. I think it's still at that point in time, weren't they? I believe they were the San Diego.
I believe so. Yeah.
And then I can remember we went one time. They were playing the day after Christmas down in Miami late in the year, and they lost on a last-second field goal down in Miami. And I can remember my daughter Megan coming down for Christmas morning because we had to fly. We had to fly right out. And I remember saying, "Hey, honey, do you like your gifts? You do? Good. I got to go." And we flew out to Miami. And I think one time, Marty Schottenheimer's last game as the head coach of the Browns might have come on Christmas Eve.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely correct against the Oilers.
Right. Yeah. But now I don't remember on Christmas Day. I don't remember us playing on Christmas Day.
Yeah, it's like the Cavs with LeBron, right? I mean, when you're relevant, Ben Axelrod, these are the spoils that you get, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were hoping for a Thanksgiving game this year, especially with the Ravens being that week, and a lot of people were kind of penciling in a Browns-Ravens primetime matchup on Thanksgiving with that third game being added, but they didn't get that, and who knows when they'll get that next, but lo and behold, yeah, I mean, Chris, you knew there was going to be some sort of holiday tie-in probably for the Browns because it has been a long time, and just a couple of notes here, some symmetry for this. That Monday night game against the Steelers, that will be January 3rd. January 3rd this year was when the Browns beat the Steelers to clinch the playoff spot. So just from a calendar standpoint, a little bit of symmetry there. And then we haven't even talked about the preseason schedule, preseason football returning to the NFL. The Browns opening at Jacksonville. So the Browns will get the first shot at Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence, and Tim Tebow down in Duval.
I think Urban Meyer's going to petition the Browns going into that game to allow Trevor Lawrence to wear a red jersey. Don't touch me.
Where else do they have? What else do we have in the preseason?
Let me look here. I couldn't get past Jacksonville.
Well, that's okay. You know what? That's the big one.
Week 2 will be it will be at home against the New York Giants. And then week 3 of the preseason will be at the Atlanta Falcons. There's only 3 preseason games,
right?
With the 17th game being added to the regular season.
Right. Well, and it's funny. The schedule comes out for us here in Cleveland and Ohio on the day that we found out that in a couple of weeks there will be no longer any health orders for COVID-19 per Governor Mike DeWine. And so, I mean, Jimmy, kind of you sit there and you visualize. We are going to have a training camp where presumably at least fans are going to get an opportunity to actually go out and watch the guys a little bit. And we are going to have some preseason football, and we are going to have a semblance of a normal looking, normal feeling schedule once we start here in September.
Which is all great. I'll tell you what, you've checked a lot of boxes there. That will be important. And I will also tell you this, which is going to be very important. And see if you guys agree with me. As you go into that Kansas City game, that opening game of the season, you still have to wonder about the availability of those guys that had those season-long injuries last year. Are they going to be ready? Will OBJ be ready? I mean, we hear he's doing great, and there are all those videos of him, looking like he could win a gold medal in Tokyo, if those things happen in Tokyo. But anyway, I mean, will Delpit be ready? Will Greedy Williams be ready? Are those guys going to be ready at the starting bell, come the beginning of the season? That will be very, very interesting to watch and see if they're going to be able to get that done.
Yeah, and I think you look at the Browns offseason, especially those 2 injuries in the secondary, Greedy Williams and Grant Delpit, just because of the nature of those injuries. They both missed the entirety of the season. Nerves, with the shoulder for Greedy Williams, that's never something I think you can be too confident about and not something you ever want to mess with. And then for an Achilles, even for a rookie like Grant Delpit, that can be a career-altering injury for some guys. So they go out, they get John Johnson III at safety. They draft Richard LeCount. They also draft Greg Newsome II in the first round and sign Troy Hill. I mean, they bulked up the secondary, but going against Tyreek Hill, going against DeMarcus Robinson and Mecole Hardman and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, this is a game you want your secondary to be at full strength. And like we said earlier, the Browns certainly have their work cut out for themselves in that regard.
And just kind of to put a bow on it, I first chance I've had to talk to you guys since the end of the draft. And as we look now, it's like Jimmy said, the draft is history. We now have a schedule. Rookie camp is getting underway. It's starting to feel real. As you guys kind of baseline thoughts from when we all talked Thursday night and the Browns, went out and made a very sensible pick in Newsome and that I think everybody felt good about. Just kind of 1 through 7. What were your thoughts on the Browns' approach and what they did to improve themselves via the draft?
Well, I think that they, very sensibly, went about their business. And I think that they were very tactical about what they were going to do. And it wasn't really much of a mystery, where sometimes you keep saying, what are teams going to do? For instance, in the first round, the pick just before the Browns is Jacksonville with their second pick in the first round. Now, the first pick is a layup, okay, because it's Trevor Lawrence, and you knew that they were going to go there. But it's really the first pick within their body of the draft. Like, what is Urban Meyer going to do now? He's got the quarterback. What's he going to do? But I think you knew where the Browns were going to go. I mean, the cornerback position was lean. It really was, because you have a question mark with Greedy Williams. You have a durability issue on the other side with Denzel Ward, though when talented, a superstar at cornerback. But when healthy, I mean, that's a question mark with him, because he's missed a pretty good ratio of games in his first 3 years. So you knew that. And plus you had to remember that the two guys that basically played a lot last year behind those guys, Terrence Mitchell and Kevin Johnson, they weren't here. They're gone. Okay. So you were going to have to replenish that. So I think it was really, pretty sensible, and you just went very thorough check. They had 4 cornerbacks they were looking at, and I think they were, saying Hail Marys that one of those guys was still going to be on the board by the time they picked, and I think they really loved the guy that they got. And then as you went down, they did what I think a lot of people feel good teams do. They started to really build up some depth with that roster. And I think last year, that's what amazed me about what they were able to accomplish last year, because they were a one-sided football team. They went 11-5, and that defense really struggled. Plus, it had key injuries inside of it. So it was a shell of what they expected it to be, and they went 11-5. And I think they not only fixed it in free agency, but then they also fixed it and restocked it, not only for this year, but certainly in years to come. I think it was just a very brilliant draft that they had. Not flashy at all, maybe aside from the kid from Notre Dame, but very, very thorough, well thought out, and you can explain every pick and say, yeah, that's going to work. And really, guys, if you go back to last year's draft, all of those players, except Delpit, who, of course, tore his Achilles tendon, all of those players after him played in big games, and in many times played a big role at some point in the season. And of course, the kid at left tackle, I mean, he was a must, and they hit it out of the park with him.
Yeah, I think Jim used the word sensible, and that's, I think, the perfect word to describe the Browns draft, at least as far as those first 3 picks, because I do think this felt like almost 2 different drafts for the Browns, day 1 and day 2, and then day 3 being the second part of it. And, I just remember watching that first round, Dino, when we were doing our show, and around the time I think the Titans picked 22nd, they took Caleb Farley, the cornerback from Virginia Tech. You start thinking, okay, if Greg Newsome's there, that's going to be the Browns pick. And Browns come up at 26 and they turn in the card and it's Greg Newsome. Then you go to night 2 and, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is falling and the Browns trade up, and you start to think, hey, this has to be for the kid from Notre Dame. And lo and behold, they turn the card in and it's for JOK. Then you figure in the 3rd round, hey, they can't just keep ignoring the offense. Like, they've got to go out and get Kevin Stefanski more weapons. The wide receiving core needs to add some speed. They go out, get the fastest receiver in the draft and Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn. I mean, they filled 3. If you had, 3 pressing needs for the Browns, cornerback, linebacker, and deep threat receiver, they filled those needs in their first 3 picks. And then on day 3, they bulked up on depth. I mean, if James Hudson is playing at any point next season, something probably went wrong for the Browns. And you could say that about Richard LeCounte and Tony Fields and some of the other guys they took in day 3. But, you look at them, they fit the Browns profile. They're high upside guys. They're high character guys, all of that. And really just continuing to build this roster for the long term, which is something Andrew Berry has talked about repeatedly this offseason.
And the most fun, at least early in the season on the broadcast and preseason, will be Doug Deacon, Jimmy, trying to say Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
I think it's pretty safe to say, Dino, he'll just go by a number identification on that.
Number 28.
Well, okay. That's right. Ben, we've got storied up now at WKYC.com. Jimmy, you'll be back tonight at 11 on What's Next to break all this down for everybody on Channel 3. So I appreciate both of you guys coming in and doing a little schedule show. Play the schedule game, everyone. And, of course, the Browns will be 17-0 when you do, but have some fun with it, and we'll have more of our thoughts both online and on air. For Jimmy Donovan, the voice of the Browns, and for Ben Axelrod, I'm Dave DeNatale. Thanks for watching our special Browns schedule release show right here on WKYC.com. Jimmy, thank you so much, my man.
Sure.
Ben, I'll talk to you there, bud.
Sounds good. Take care, guys.